Hey everybody, I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we have a mission to change the world one brave word at a time. And today we're celebrating the release of an upcoming book called Sacred Death, 25 Tools for Caregivers. This is a project led by Hemali Vora. And first I want to say a huge thank you to her. Hemali, thank you for your vision for this book. We wouldn't be here without your beautiful mission to help people talk about and understand death in a different, more powerful and impactful way. And this was a brave project to lead. And I'm speaking for everyone when I say that we're so honored to be a part of it. So here to help me with this important and powerful discussion are some of the authors of this amazing collaboration. Welcome, you guys. How's it going?
Very good.
Good, Laura. Thank you for having us.
Doing well, thank you.
I'm so happy to have you all here. And listeners, I have Shabnam Hashemi. She's a public health and hospice nurse advocate, life transitions healing facilitator, and energy medicine practitioner. Scott Holmes is a Reiki master and polarity therapist. James Kawanui is a native Hawaiian healer whose passion and commitment is to help people live positive, productive, pain-free lives. And Krupa Vora is the owner of Inspired Breath Yoga. She's a holistic pharmacist who believes the power of breath promotes health and wellness in adults and children alike. And y'all feeling the power that I have in this Zoom room right now? I hope you are.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, so a little bit random order. Shabnam, I want you to start this party off for us. Tell us about your amazing chapter. Oops, can't hear you, my dear. How come we can't hear her all of a sudden?
There we go.
Better?
Yes, there you are. Okay. Take two.
Yes. My chapter is called, it's chapter 2, and it's called How to Live and Die on Your Own Terms. And it's about the life and death of my sister, who had a very brave battle with breast cancer. And the circumstance of how I came to meet Hemali, and I think that was all arranged by her, if you ask me. And the way the chapter came through is all arranged by her, because when afterwards I wrote it and I read it, I was like, did I write this? And it's all about how she wanted to teach her battle with what she learned about life and death and battling cancer. And I thought it was important that that was shared with everyone out there that is going through the same thing. And as partly as her caregiver, being able to convey what you go through and all of your feelings of fear and doubt, everything, all that roller coaster that you go through with someone who is fighting for their life. And as a hospice nurse, having witnessed all of that, and it's important for me, for people to know that death is inevitable, and being prepared as a caregiver and honoring your loved one's wishes is extremely important.
This has come up in all of our interviews, this reminder that death is inevitable, and really not to bum people out, but just to inspire them to live differently. What else do you want to say about that?
Well, that's something that, as you could see in the chapter, that my sister kept telling me is to live. And at the time, I was like, well, what is she talking about? But the more I studied and researched, it's like none of us know what's going to happen tomorrow. And if we sit here and worry about how am I going to die in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, we lose that moment. We could do so much for ourselves and other people to stay healthy, to be able to, if, say, carry a legacy from whoever you look up to. I feel like we're given this life to live, and most of us just sit there and worry about how it's going to end, and never get to really enjoy ourselves. And it's not easy when you have loved ones die one after the other. It's like, how do I enjoy my life? But I think we owe it to them. As hard as it is, just to keep reminding ourselves that we're here to live.
Yeah, I love hearing you say we owe it to them. And if we remember that, then that awareness in the moment is going to change how we, move forward there. You have had a lifetime's worth of experience in this realm as a hospice advocate. Tell me just a little bit more about how that journey has been for you.
I happened to, I wasn't a nurse. Nursing's not my first career. So when my previous career, my ex-mother-in-law died with hospice at home. And I was just intrigued by how these nurses cared for her. They even showed up to the funeral. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I had never known nurses to do something like this. And I don't know, over 10 years later, when I became a nurse, that was my first job out of nursing school, happened to be hospice. And it kind of has come full circle now. And I'm again back in hospice because I'd done other stuff in the middle. To me, it's like an honor and privilege to be able to be there with somebody who's taking their last breath and make sure it's comfortable, make sure the whole room is, if it's possible, because all the dynamics change when somebody is dying, but just to be there for people when they're, and then help them usher out of this world. And a lot of my Reiki training and shamanic training has enabled me to be able to provide that space of comfort and healing that takes place at that moment. So, and I just keep trying to tell every patient that I have to, if they can, to make their wishes known, and to the family to be able to honor that, because I hear a lot of family members are like, well, he tells me he's ready, but I'm not ready. So I'm just going to make him keep fighting. So that to me, that's going to be my mission, I think, until I retire, to help people come to terms with that. That is their life, their death. We're here just to help them.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Important.
If I could add something, Laura, that whole piece about the privilege of sitting with someone as they're going through that process is I think that's really big, because it is, you're watching the process of death and you're sitting with that person, and that privilege of that experience is just something that you can't replace. And I think, given that everybody has an opportunity to do that, I think your lives will change.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, no doubt. And I'm going to say thanks to all of you for being people who have taken responsibility for that. And you're offering these beautiful stories and tools and these chapters that are just complete gifts to our readers. Okay, thank you, Shabnam. I'm going to move to Scott. Scott, talk to us about this amazing chapter that you wrote.
I had the opportunity and the privilege to write chapter 8, Your Path is Revealed. In it, I talk about my daughter and my wife. My daughter became multiply handicapped through a disease at a very young age and lived to 16 years old. My wife was a 22-year breast cancer survivor. She just went through an incredible roller coaster of hospital stays, of cancer treatment, of radiation, of chemotherapy, of FDA studies, of everything else. For 22 years, she hung in there, battled this. And for the last 18 months of her life, she just very slowly devolved, if you will, as she was passing. And I grieved a little bit every time we lost something. Her ability, she had to retire from work. She couldn't drive anymore. She couldn't get downstairs anymore. She couldn't. So there's a grieving process there, and you're holding that space the whole time. And also the difficulties of trying to be everything for that person you're giving care to, but also to keep everything else going. And as a caregiver, men in my family have ended up being that. I just visited my uncle, and his wife has got Alzheimer's, and he's 78 years old, and he's having to do that. My father did that for my mother. I had just lost my parents over the last year, and holding space. And Shabnam, I want to tell you that hospice nurses are an amazing, it's a calling, and it is an amazing, absolutely amazing thing to be done. I couldn't do that. I know I couldn't do that, but they come in, they give compassion, they hold space, they give care, they allow this person to have less pain, and what they give to the family is just that assurance that somebody is there. As we go through, as my wife transitioned, and she went 10 days without water, without food, without anything, and I just kept day after day after day sitting there, and I didn't understand how a human being could go 10 days without anything and still survive. And they looked at me and said, "Oh no, it could go 30 days." And I just was shocked, just when the spirit is willing. But it's more about the transition that I had afterwards. My wife gave me the gift of understanding life. Getting through those first 6 months after she passed were just, you go home to an empty house, just not the same. You don't know what to do. You don't. So reinventing yourself. I started with Reiki, went to more energy work through Polarity, through theta healing, through a lot of different things. And I found myself in this journey. And the thing that I wanted to share with people is that it's kind of like that flower blossom. You have to peel back the layers very slowly, very, very slowly, to heal, because you've been so involved with caregiving and caretaking of that person. And it just is that journey that very slowly you kind of peel that away. The hurt gets a little bit less. You reveal more of yourself. And nobody can ever tell you how long that's going to take. And that's the prospect. And just if I may say, the chapters in this book are so powerful. I was brought to tears many times reading these, because having lost those people in my life, and the authors and all the authors that Hemali were able to bring together have been so moving. And I know that anybody who reads this book will connect with one of the stories. It'll be either similar or an experience that they can share and know that they're not alone. And I think loneliness is that part when you lose somebody. That sense of aloneness is a big part of what we go through.
Oh my gosh, no doubt in what you just said about this book. And grab your Kleenex, and it'll be a really good thing, though. It'll be a really, really amazing thing as you move through the journey of these chapters and the stories and also the tools. I'm going to just say a quick thank you to all of you for offering those authentic stories and then moving through to your master teachings to help people understand that perspective and ways to think about it and things to do and tools to use. And such a gift. Thank you all for doing that so brilliantly. So James, tell us about your amazing chapter.
Of the group that's assembled here, and thank you, Laura, for inviting me this morning. I wrote chapter 5, and it's called "Filling Your Empty Cup" or "Filling Your Cup." And of everybody here, the process that I went through didn't involve family. Although in the process of sitting with the people that I helped transition over those 4.5 years, they became family. So in the end, it was like that. But I approached it a little bit differently because I was looking at it from this place as, I do healing work anyway. And I've been a giver. I'm the oldest of 8 in my family. So I've been a giver all my life. And so there was this place as I was going through the process that I talk about in the chapter where I just kept giving myself away. And there was a point where I had given everything away and there was nothing else to give. And so a lot of my chapter is about really how we take care of ourselves. And I think in the process of that we go through when we're sitting with somebody that's about to transition is they become our world. And so everything revolves around them. And so there's this place that I had to step back because it was starting to affect me physically and psychologically, where it was, wait a minute, James, you need to take care of yourself. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn. So my chapter was the story of this beautiful transition of these two beautiful people, because it was a husband and a wife, and they had been married for 60 years. And I realized shortly after I came into contact with them, that my job was to help them transition. And so that's when I became completely involved in their life and said, okay, I'm going to be here to sit as they take their last breath. And that is probably something that I will always remember is that process of being with someone as they take their last breath.
And you said it earlier, what an honor. And that's, I don't know, what else do you want to say about that? I want to shift for just a second, because you hit on something that, and you guys wouldn't know this yet, but every single interview that I've done so far, the theme of how you're going to take care of yourself while you're doing all this other stuff for that individual and or their whole family or whatever your role is. And oh my gosh, we need a survival guide for that.
Yeah,
and I think, James, yours is one of those chapters. Tell me more about that.
It was, we have to take ourselves, as much as we're focusing on the person or the family that we're working with, we have to realize that we cannot. It's that old adage that says that, I can't give from an empty cup. And so that idea of going back and refilling the cup and walking away and energetically disconnecting myself from time to time from the process that's going on is really is really important. And maybe for me, it was a little bit different because it wasn't family. It wasn't a spouse or a loved one that I was talking about. And yet I think even still, we all have to have that ability to step back and to walk away and to do the yoga and the pranayama and all the other things that happened, and I think all of us in our tools all talked about that, some aspect of that caregiving, but some aspect of that recentering and regrounding inside of us.
Yes.
James, if I could add, the journey that I took, it was really about going back inside myself and finding me again. So much of myself was in caregiving. Everything was out. Everything was about everything and everyone else and making sure they were okay. And I forgot about me. And so when everything was done and everybody walked away and I'm sitting alone in the house, I was a shell.
Yeah.
And I have talked to people and they have said the same thing, that they just don't know what to do. And you need energy for grieving. You need to take care of yourself better in order to make better decisions. You need to do all of those things as self-care. And James, you're so right about just being able to do it from a position of strength, because the stronger you are, the more you can give, the more you can sustain, the more you can help those people that you want to help.
Yes, thank you, Scott.
There's another aspect of that as well. When you sit with somebody, and I didn't talk about this in my chapter, but this is really apparent in reading the book, as you sit with someone that's going through the transition and the death process, we have to come to terms with death on our terms as well, right? And where we are inside of that. And that was probably one of the biggest healings or lessons I came out of that with, is that place of I have to be okay, and I am okay. If I was to die today, or how whatever would happen, I would be okay, because there's less fear now of the process of dying than I had 10 or 20 years ago.
Oh my goodness. And you guys are just going to get right into the next question I have for you already, but we need to hear from Krupa. So Krupa, tell me about your amazing chapter. And then I am going to get to that next question for you guys about the fear of dying.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, rest of the authors. I had to add so much because I feel like, yes, I felt this, I felt that, a little bit of what James said, what Shamdam said, what Scott said. So my chapter is it's chapter number 3, breath. Breath is the very first and very last act of our life, and we take it for granted. So in my story, I write about my dad's death, and he died about 10 years ago, but there's still that raw spot that every time I hear about death, I freeze. And then I've also come up with the way of healing myself, but it still hits you for a minute. And then you're like, okay, I could do this, So in my chapter, I write about how my dad died, and how I just felt numb and I was hopeless. And everybody who surrounded us were saying, just be strong for your mom, just be strong for the family. And I feel like each of us cried separately. We just did not cry together as a family. And just kind of, it feels like, we're still mourning, So a couple months later, after feeling this way, not eating right, not sleeping right, it's just, you're more like a zombie. And in my story, it takes a little bit, a different turn where I get a phone call, and I had to deal with death of a relationship. And it was like the grief just got complicated back to back. And I was like, how much more should I be expecting of this grief? And, your body takes a toll. Sorry, I already feel talking about it. This is, I think, the first time I'm actually coming out and talking about it. I only share this with like 2-3 friends of mine, and it kind of feels good just talking about it. When I wrote about it, it was like, I need to do more of this. I know I need to do more of this. Because in our society, it's more like, why do you want to talk about how you feel, or why do you want to talk about your personal issues? And it just feels great. And coming back to my story, I was just a giver in a relationship, and part of me was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I know I need to take care of myself. I had started losing weight. I was only about 110, but all of a sudden, a month later, I was 95. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't, just not taking care of myself overall. And, I was still working, and life was just kind of passing by. And I can't remember, like, did I eat today? Like, just not taking care of myself. And then something just clicked in me. It's more about my dad telling me, like, just always being there, and guiding me, like being my angel, and, to take care of myself. And I started observing my breath. Anytime I hear about death, or I hear about somebody being cheated on, I would have panic attacks. My heart would be just wanting to jump out of my body. And, a couple of times I was at work when it happened, and I was like, let me check my blood pressure. And my pulse was like 110, 120 off the roof. And I'm like, I'm usually low, low blood pressure person. But so that kind of brought me into a realization, am I breathing okay? How is my breath? I started observing myself without judging myself, without judging anything what's happening to me. And, I hit many bottoms, and I felt like, okay, this is my rock bottom. But no, there's the mind just kept on, giving me more and more, and just thoughts were just racing. It was like, I don't know, it was more like 1,000 per second, I felt. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, that's when I was like, okay, this is it. I need to do something different. I had to figure out which death was more important to me to deal with. And that's when I realized mourning for my dad was more my priority. And as soon as I started mourning for my dad, I usually call him Papa. So I have written in my book, Papa. But tell you the truth, it was where my life began. So if you ask me today, what does death mean to you? Today, it means new beginning. Back then, it was more like the end. So
that's beautiful, Krupa. Thank you for sharing that. Y'all are going to really enjoy Krupa's story. And I appreciated the piece where it's the, oh my gosh, especially this year, a few authors have talked about our past year of COVID and everything that was dumped on us in addition to what was already there, our normal life things that we were going through. And what Krupa, I think, is talking about too is, right, I was dealing with this over here, and then all of a sudden this other thing came along that in and of itself would have been enough to deal with for any human being. And we're all having a journey where we're coming up and down from having moments like this. And again, I'll just get back to that survival guide. I think we all need to understand what that is for ourselves. And Krupa, I appreciate you talking about your story and being open about it, maybe for the first time. I think it's going to change lives. I wrote down something from when you were talking and it just kind of hit me. I heard, be strong for the family. And then each of us in the family cried separately instead of together. So I pull quotes out a lot of the times when you guys are talking, and powerful quotes. And I want listeners to hear that, because they're probably saying it to other family members, or they've heard it said to them, be strong for the family. And really, what does that mean? What are you telling a person to do there? You're telling them to hide the very important feelings and emotions and sensations that are coming up in them, that if you would give them permission to be all that, they would be healing in the moment rather than stuffing it down and making it last for who knows how long, right? So you got me started on that one, Krupa.
And that's what our society has taught us to do, is to not talk about it, and it just prolongs everything instead of letting us have the emotion and the moment, because in that moment, then we have the ability to look at it and then give ourselves permission to let it go so that we can move on.
Yep. With the awareness, you get the choice. And James, how did you know I was going to start with you for this next question? So I'm going to come around to all of you for this one. Okay. But I'm going to start with James. And awareness is the foundation for everything when it comes to understanding what's possible on this journey of life and death and the grief we experience. So James, what do you want to share about your own awareness practice and the importance of it?
Before I say that, I just want to go back to Krupa, because I want to make a mention of her story, because that's part in the story when you were running the marathon and your friend threw you the towel and pulled you for that mile until you came back inside of yourself. I thought that was very powerful. So I just want to acknowledge you for that. So
thank you, James.
You're welcome. The awareness that we have inside, like for me, the awareness that I was giving too much, that I was literally at the end of my rope. It's a place of, we get lost. I think Krupa talked about it too. We get lost inside of our mind, and our mind will tell us things that are not necessarily true. Our mind will tell us things that say we have to do X, Y, and Z. And the reality is that that's not true at all. So when I can step back into present moment, and I think all of us talked about that in our chapters in one way or another, is coming back into present moment. In other words, coming back so that I feel my breath, which is really important. Coming back so that I can go, wait a minute, I'm here, not wherever my story is telling me to go, right? And when I come back into my present, into the presence, and people talk about this a lot, and I'm aware, I will probably make better choices and be much clearer about my direction and my focus. And if I'm running constantly, and I say this, if I'm constantly reacting to the things that are outside of me, every time I do that, I'm giving my energy away. So slowly, I'm just kind of giving what I have away till there's nothing to give because I'm reacting. And so in awareness, it means I'm not reacting, I'm in the present. So I guess that would be the answer that I give you.
Yeah, beautiful answer. Really foundational way to look at life if you're interested in life feeling better. Really. So Krupa, I'm actually going to pop back to you for this next and tell us a little bit about your awareness practice and how that was powerful for you.
So I started observing my breath every time I would be, so I work at a retail pharmacy, and it's very stressful. And it's like you're dealing with a phone call and customers and patients and counseling, and there's like always 4 things waiting for you. And my breathing just gets more shallow. And I just started observing it. I would write down and journal, how was my breath today? Because my dad died of, pulmonary fibrosis, and it was about, breath. And that just made me be like, okay, how is my breathing doing today? Because we just don't think about our breath so much. So I would start journaling, and that's when I found out that, okay, I'm happy and my breath is completely fine. And when I am hearing about my trigger points, which was death at that moment, and being cheated on at that moment, and it would be shallow, and I feel like, okay, I need like inhaler or somebody to help me breathe. And that's how my journey started. And I've slowly things started shifting, just recognizing my breath and what I need to do to help myself, and just pause and just take a deep breath. And that helps. And then learning more about different types of breath help me more, with my daily journey.
Thank you. Breathwork is a profound tool, and it's also, I think, the very fastest and easiest way into the body for the moment of awareness that you're looking for, because we have to do it to stay alive. So we have all of these opportunities one after another for that kind of awareness. I appreciate you talking about that. Shabnam, how about you for awareness? Talk to us about your personal practice.
So similar to Krupa, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I also started noticing, even when I was driving or working, that I wasn't breathing at all. And I kept reading about breath, how important it is, and all of my research about the vagus nerve and how it can really regulate your whole, I know, being in science, I knew that, but you just forget. How it can regulate your blood pressure and your breath, and how important that was. And I was trying to teach other nurses about caring for themselves as a caregiver and not burning out. And it was like you said, it was the easiest thing. You can just go to the bathroom and close the door and start deep breathing. And after 2 minutes, you're kind of like, okay, I'm okay. No, everything's okay for a moment. And then also to allowing myself to really feel the grief, because if you don't and you keep pushing it down, like everybody's telling us, my mother was devastated after my sister, and she just didn't want to live. And so having to hold her up as well for me and my other sister was just like a little difficult. But I started just, yelling and screaming in my car if I needed to, and cry really loud because, coming from a culture that mourning was okay, not in front of other people. You have mourning sessions, which helps people mourn. They're allowed to mourn. So those things help me, just the breathing and being able to really feel the emotions and let it pass through you until the next wave came up. And I lived near the ocean, so walking on the water, near the water, absolutely helped. Just, it did something to me, and it still does. Being aware of the animals and the birds and everything that's happening in nature, just reinforcing that we're here to live, and enjoy what's been given to us, until our time comes.
I wrote down a question here. Were you allowed to mourn? What a silly question. Like, not silly, but you guys know what I mean, right? Like, listening to Shabnam, I'm like, whoa, where did your rules come from? Listeners, where did your rules come from? Like, we have to question it. And to even say out loud, being allowed to mourn, just is like, are you kidding me? But that's why we're talking today, right? That's why we're writing this book.
Yeah.
All of that. Yeah.
If I can add, actually, so we have in our tradition 13 days to mourn, where all the family come together. They're there for you, and you mourn and you pray. But after everything kind of slows down, that's when everything just hits you. And before they leave after 13 days, they're like, stay strong, stay strong. And I remember my younger cousin went through something similar, and everybody's telling her, all the families together. And I got up and I said, no, don't say that. You cry out as much as you want. You cry until your tears dry out. You need to cry.
Nice.
That's beautiful.
Yes. And more of us will be standing up after having these conversations. So this is why, this is a big deal to me. This changes things. This changes the world, really. Scott, talk to me about this topic, the awareness practice, especially your personal journey.
The awareness. What helped bring me through this is yoga. Been practicing for 14 years, but really concentrated on it. And people say, well, you do yoga. Okay. Well, you put your arm out. All right. Well, it's not the act of it. It is with intention. Intention has that effect of bringing presence to what you're doing. You put your arm out. You keep it there. You feel it. Put it as far as you can. And now you bring it a little bit further, just that little bit. And it's that intention in yoga that brings everything, the breath. James, you were talking to Chapman, you were talking about breath, controlling it, changing it, being aware of it. One of the simplest practices that my yogini had was, in times of stress, focus on the tip of your nose. And I said, what? She said, no, your breath coming out of your nose, just be aware of it. And all of a sudden, everything just goes out of focus. You focus on your breath, just on the tip of your nose. And all of a sudden, everything just comes back into focus and everything comes up into alignment. And it's absolutely amazing. And the awareness of bringing yoga into your everyday, what you do, because when you're doing what I've learned is, when I do yoga, it's with intention. And so if you do things with intention, you're present. When you're present, you don't lose things. You don't lose yourself. You don't concentrate on all the other things that are going on in your life. You don't concentrate on drama. And Shabna, my safe place, when they tell you shut your eyes and go to your happy place, it's walking on the beach at the ocean, and I feel so grounded. I feel so enriched. I feel so cleansed by that. It's the grounding of it. You see people who are looking for partners, and they say, like to take long walks on the beach. I don't know anyone who actually does it every day, but just doing that, it brings you closer to nature, brings you closer and grounds you, and it's again with intention, and that's what brought me through the process of the grieving process. Is when the emotion's there, you don't tamp it down. You bring it up, you deal with it, and maybe the next time it's not as overwhelming. That awareness, that intention, and that's yoga has been that good for me that it's changed the way I perceive life, the way I perceive every day. That when I do it, the saying goes, if you don't want to do it, you get on the mat. If you do want to do it, you get on the mat. If you don't feel like doing it, you get on the mat. Because once you're on the mat and you're doing yoga, everything seems to find a way to be healed, be centered, and you can get through anything. And that's where the awareness comes from, and everything stems from there. I started every day. First thing I do is get on the mat, and my day turns out pretty well.
I love it. So I want to do a poll for everybody. So at least one of your happy places is on the beach. Yeah. I'm pretty sure if we took the poll. So I'm thinking we all need to pick the same beach and have a party. Like if we're all walking on the beach in our mind, like let's join James at one of his Hawaiian beaches. Let's go.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Ocean City, Maryland. No, wait a minute. The Atlantic City in Jersey.
Not enough room to walk over there, I don't think. I don't know.
I think it's a good point though, because I think the nature recharge is a really huge piece inside of this as part of this. We were talking about self-care, that us coming back to nature, even if it's just me imagining myself on the beach, or the opportunity to be on the beach or in the walk. I mean, I know when I was going through the process I went through with the people that I was working with, I was really lucky because there was 100-year-old redwood tree in their backyard. I mean, this thing was like 7-8 foot. And I would go out and I would sit with my back to it for an hour to recharge before I went back in to take back, the activities that we're doing. So I'm glad that I heard, that, and we talk about that having to be in nature as part of our self-care.
Beautiful recharge. Okay, y'all, we have a few minutes left, and I am really going to try to get 2 more questions to all of you, which means you got to do the speed dating version of your answers. Ready? So Scott, yep. I want to know what's one thing you remember about what you were taught about death growing up. I know this can be a long answer. What's one thing you remember?
Get over it.
Get over it. And what do you know now?
There is no time frame for grieving. I still grieve. It's been 5 years. There are times that, and it hits you whenever in the weirdest places, something will come up. I'll open a box and I'll see something and it brings back a memory, and that feeling comes up. And it's an ongoing process. There is no start. There's no finish to it. It's always with you. But I was always taught, okay, it's been a week, get over it. Yeah. And that was the New England tradition of just, okay, next.
New England tradition. Perfect. Okay, James, what's one thing you remember about what you were taught about death growing up?
I wasn't taught anything.
Okay, yes.
I wasn't really taught anything. It was
fair answer.
We all got together and the person wasn't there and everybody cried and people were angry and
okay, so now what's one thing you know now differently?
What you said at the very beginning, that death is inevitable. I think Shabnam said that. And so that understanding of that says, okay, we don't hide from it anymore. We actually look at it and we come to terms with it inside of ourselves in the best way possible.
Yes, beautiful. You guys are going to get trophies for these short answers. Krupa, I'm seriously, these topics, right? We could sit here all day on these conversations, and I've got some beautiful things to tell you guys about how you're going to do that after you listen to this interview. But Krupa, one thing you learned growing up about this?
Through reading scriptures, I learned rebirth, but not taught anything about it. That James just kind of, answered for me.
So
But
now what do you know? How did you continue?
rebirth. I am, reading more about what happens after death, and rebirth.
And I hear curiosity, which is so key to awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Just continuing our learning process, really important. Shabnam, how about you? One thing you learned about this growing up?
Well, growing up, like James said, people just died in the family, and they had gatherings, cried over it, and most of the time we were kept out of the funeral. For some reason, my dad didn't want us to be exposed to it and be upset. But what I know now is that possibly it's not the end. It is a very sacred process. It takes group effort to get through it. And grieving is very personal, and it never ends. And you just have to go with emotions, as Scott was mentioning.
Yes, beautiful. And what a beautiful way to wrap up today, you guys. We do this together. And thank you all so much for what you're doing in the world and for being here today to share with everybody. Thank you all.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, for creating the vessel for us to be able to do this. Really.
Yes.
My total pleasure, you guys. And so that thing I hinted to a moment ago is, and what I want you guys to take advantage of is come into the Sacred Death Community Group on Facebook now, because these beautiful authors are there and they can continue the conversation with you. They can answer questions about what you've heard today. Some of us don't have the people around us who are really honoring those conversations. It's too hard for them, or they have certain limited beliefs about it. So you're getting shut down in your closest circles sometimes. So what we want to let you know is that you have a whole bunch of beautiful faces that you're staring at right now who will be like, yes, let's talk about it. Because they know, you guys. So that's, I've got the link hooked up down below, and I have all of these authors' websites hooked up for you. So take the next step, go into their world, the next step, learn about all the awesomeness that they are doing and offering. And please don't forget to join us on August 17th at 10 a.m. Eastern for our live stream book launch party. That'll be on the Brave Healer Productions Facebook page. We're going to have all our authors there to share their wisdom, and we're going to have some pretty cool giveaways for our book purchasers that day too. Of course, you're listening after the 17th of August. Well, get your butt to Amazon, because that means the book is ready and you can grab your copy, right? So lastly today, everybody remember, your brave words will change the world. What if that thing you're still a little afraid to share is exactly what someone needs to hear to change or even save their life? It is time to be brave. See you next time, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.